Yo, what's up boys? It's Betta-ah here with my SeRiouS Poison SrS Necromancer BuildGuide. When the patch notes released for 3.19 and I saw that minions gained a massive more damage increase with poison, I immediately thought I have to try this out with Summon Raging Spirits to make them great once again. I initially started the build off as a League starter that got to T10 Maps with only a 5 link and a 6 chaos budget, which was the traditional SrS build without poison, that I further invested 140 chaos to transition it to have a 100% chance to poison by using ghastly jewels. This was able to do T16 mapping comfortably and early bossing without any problems. The current state of the build is with around about 5 to 7 divines invested that can definitely be improved on with further investments, of course. Most of the gear I was able to craft myself with essences and a few lucky exalt slams, but more on that later. The build is able to do everything in the game, including all of the invitations, endgame bosses, and map modifiers, except for cannot regen and uber bosses with its 14 million pinnacle boss DPS and around about 50k damage mitigation. Should you want to do uber bosses, I have an endgame path of building set up with Aegis Aurora, cluster jewels, and awakened gems down below in the description for you, along with the guide setup. Before we continue, if you are not yet subscribed to my channel, then hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with my latest videos that include build updates, build guides, and live streams that I do right here on YouTube. Also, consider dropping a like on the video and sharing it should it pique your serious poisonous senses. So, how the build works effectively is that we give our Summon Raging Spirits a 100% chance to poison enemies via a chance to poison support gem that gives 40%, and the United in Dream Sword giving the other 60% chance. We stack up a decent amount of attack speed so our minions can apply the poisons quickly via our Ascendancy, Flesh Offering, Multi-Strike, and the skill tree, giving around about 4 attacks a second per Summon Raging Spirit. In order to scale the poison damage output, we make use of a Amanamu's Gaze Jewel, giving our minions a 30% more damage over time multiplier, and Valtoxins, adding a further 65% more damage with poisons. To make the poisons and chaos damage even more potent, we take advantage of Wither linked to Spell Totem to apply up to 15 Wither debuffs on bossing, giving an extra 90% increased chaos damage taken, and our Despair Curse for the 30% negative chaos resistance and 35% increased damage taken. To further increase the overall damage, we make use of massive amounts of extra chaos damage via the Envy Aura linked to Generosity, the Covenant Chest for level 29 added chaos damage, Unnatural Strength from our Ascendancy for the 30% physical as extra chaos damage, Ghastly jewels with flat added chaos damage to minions, and our Despair Curse. To round off our total damage, an Animate Guardian is used, giving Culling Strike and 50% increased damage, but don't forget our Utility Spectres, which are an Arena Master. This gives us a temporary 40% increased attack and movement speed buff for our minions. The Pale Seraphim, which causes enemies to take 15% increased damage from all sources, and the Wild Bristle Matron that reduces enemies' action speed by up to 40%. In terms of our defensive layers, we rely on our minions to be meat shields most of the time, otherwise we utilize plus minus 60% attack and spell block chance, high positive chaos resistance, a decent amount of armor from our Determination Aura, over 700 life regeneration, blind on hit from our minions, bone armor from the Ascendancy, and Fortify with crit immunity from our Animate Guardian. Plus, he also applies Enfeeble on hit, which further reduces the amount of damage that enemies deal to us and our minions. In terms of the build's playstyle, it is very relaxed, with being able to summon 4 Summon Raging Spirits at a time thanks to Unleash, making it less tedious to keep them capped at 20. What makes this even better is that you can off-screen enemies as they wander off to the nearest enemy and keep clearing. For bossing, they will lock on and you can freely move around without having to worry, meaning you are able to avoid mechanics easily and stress-free. Make sure to desecrate in order to keep Flesh Offering up, and use Convocation to keep your minions out of harsh mechanics, while Flame Dashing for utility. Also, don't forget to summon your totems to apply Wither on difficult enemies or bosses while using your Despair Curse to further increase the amount of damage that they take. The pros of the build is decent clear speed while mapping, somewhat crazy boss damage at 14 Million Pinnacle Boss DPS, along with easily achievable gearing and it's League Start viable with a few pieces of cheap gear that can be transitioned to poison. As we utilize minions, we do not need to be in the fray of danger and can easily rely on them to clear content. It's a stress-free build, allowing you to focus on mechanics more easily, while letting your minions do all of the work for you. For the cons, it's of course a minion build and may not appeal to everyone, as it does not satisfy your thirst for bloody destruction. The build can get expensive with awakened gems and not crafting your own gear. The build is also unable to do any of the uber bosses in its current state, but can do so with the endgame setup no problem. Cannot regen modifiers are absolute aids to deal with, but can be done with a mana flask. And lastly, degens can be deadly to both you and your minions. Alright, so then moving on, I've got 4 separate path of buildings for you. The very first one is the 6 chaos budget, which will take you all the way up until around about T10 maps. Over here, I've also got leveling trees for you for each act. And then from there on, you'll want to move over into the initial setup. And over here, I believe I've also got leveling trees. Oh no, in this one, I do not have leveling trees. This is just the initial poison setup of what you should be aiming for. And then obviously, I've got the builds setup and the guards setup included as well. This one has got leveling trees 2 for you for each of the acts, along with notes. And in the notes, you will find each act broken down for you in terms of what skills you should be using and utilizing for in later acts and so forth. And then along with that, I've also got a few recommended leveling uniques just to make your experience a bit smoother. And then moving on, I've also got the gear priority over here in terms of which gear pieces and what you should prioritize first, and then get later on down the line as you can afford different things. And then to just make things a lot more easier on you, I've also got trade links of each of the items over here for you, should you want to just be a little bit lazy, you know, should I say. And then obviously I've also got the Animate Guardian links over here too for you for each of the items. Just do note that underneath the items are the item set. You can switch it to Animate Guardian to see the Animate Guardian's items too, should you be interested. And then of course in the notes I also have the specters of which you should be using. And then moving on, I've also got the endgame setup for you. And I've also included all of the notes here for you too. And then this is pretty much all of the items that you should aim for, which of course is an Ashes, an Aegis Aurora, and a couple of Awakened Gems too. All 4 of these path of buildings will be down below in the description for you, all in order according to leveling through the very beginning, getting all the way through until endgame as well. Right, so moving over on to your Pantheon, what you should be using is Soul of the Brine King, so that you cannot be continuously stunned, along with cannot be frozen, which is really good, and the reduced effect of chill on you too, which does help out a lot, especially during mapping. And then of course for the mana, I did go with Soul of Garakan for the reduced effect of shock on you. Obviously you can probably go with Soul of Aberrath, so you are immune to Burning Ground and that, as that can be pretty cancerous at times. And then also for bossing, if you really want, you can switch to Soul of Solaris for the reduced damage and that taken as well, but I find it's not really necessary. And then for mapping, if you don't enjoy projectiles chaining and you want a little bit more movement speed, you can of course go with Solid Lunaris as well. Right, moving on to our Ascendancy now. Of course, for your normal lab, you'll want to pick up Command of Darkness, giving your minions an extra 3% attack and cast speed per aura on you and them. And then, of course, the 30% increased damage, along with 30% to all elemental resistances for you and your minions, which does help out on capping resistances early on. In terms of your Cruel Lab, you will pick up Mindless Aggression, giving minions increased movement speed, a hefty amount of increased damage, and of course attack and cast speed once again. And then once you get to Merciless Lab, it is pretty much up to you. I would recommend going with Bone Barrier first, but of course you can go with Unnatural Strength for the Unholy Might, giving your minions 30% of physical damage as extra chaos damage. And then of course for the last lab, most likely you should probably pick up Bone Barrier, giving extra physical mitigation, which is up to 10%, as we have about 20 to 30 minions up the entire time. And of course this does give us increased recovery rate of life and energy shield, which is up to 20%, which is always active of course. And then minions have 20% more life, just to make our minions, but mostly our Animate Guardian, a bit more tanky. Right, moving on to our gearing now is the United in Dream Sword, of course, which grants the Envy skill. This gives a huge amount of flat added chaos damage, along with quite a large amount of increased minion damage, along with the increased chaos resistance to minions, which is very well paired with our skill trees chaos resistance, along with the most important mod over here being minions have a 60% chance to poison enemies on hit. And then of course a 5% life leech against poisoned enemies, just to keep our minions topped up for majority of the time, unless they're getting one shots, which does tend to happen with our Summon Raging Spirits, especially on boss fights, but I didn't find that to be an issue at all. Right, then moving on to our helmet. It is a bone helmet for the minions deal increased damage. And then the enchant that you should look for is Summon Raging Spirits deal 40% increased damage. This is just for even more damage. And then on the bone helmet, the most important thing that you need is +1 to level of all minion skill gems, or +2 with some resistances and maybe crafted life or even just rolled life on it. You can also probably get to craft yourself a helmet such as this one, which has got +2 to level of all skill gems, high resistances, and a decent amount of life. How you come by doing this is alteration spamming a base with the Summon Raging Spirits deal 40% increased damage until you hit either +1 or +2 to level of all minion skill gems. And then of course what you want to do is obviously then to regal it to make it rare, and then hope for maybe hitting some resistances or even maybe some strength or dexterity or something like that. From there on, what you want to do is you want to lock prefixes, as the level of all minion skill gems is a prefix. And then what you want to do is harvest craft it with any form of resistance, being cold, fire, or lightning, and then pretty much just pray on getting some decent rolls out of it. Right, moving on to our amulet then. In terms of our anointment, you must get Death Attunement for the +1 to number of specters. This is in order for us to run 3 utility specters instead of just 2 of them. And then on the amulet, what you need is quite a bit of attributes, some strength, any resistance maybe that you might need. But more importantly, what you really need on the amulet is +1 to level of all skill gems. This is just to bump up all of your auras and the skill gems and so forth. And then moving on to our shield is just pretty much a shitty shield over here with quite a large amount of armor and some resistances, along with a decent amount of life, I would say. But more so what you really want on the shield is the life gained when you block, which is well paired with your mastery to have over 100 life gained when you block. This is just for a little bit of utility, I guess you can say. And then moving on to your boots, of course, you should pick up a pair of fugitive boots, which have got chaos resistance, and then craft on resistance with chaos resistance. So the boots give you about 50 chaos rays or so. And then of course you can look for ones which have got some life, and movement speed is a huge bonus here, but it is not a must. I must just add that it is not a must to have on the boots early on. But later on, for boss fights and that, the movement speed is very nice. Of course, you can get more chaos resistance on other gear pieces, should you choose to do so. That is an option, definitely is an option. And then moving on to the gloves over here, you should look to get any pair of gloves which have got armor, pretty much. And then what you want to do is spam a few deafening essences of fear on it until you get some decent rolls. Over here I was very lucky and I landed strength with high fire res, And then I crafted on the Laugh, and I Exalt Slammed it for the lightning resistance. I got very lucky with this Exalt Slam. I think it took me about maybe 15 to 20 essences to make these gloves. And then I tried making another pair, and then I landed a decent roll again within like 7 essences, and I Exalt Slammed that one, and I landed like Dexterity or something on it too with double res. Obviously not such high res, but still. It definitely is doable. And then of course what you want to do is use the Eater of Worlds implicit to get the fire exposure, as our Summon Raging Spirits transfer 100% of their physical damage to fire damage. This does just add a little bit extra damage, and then of course minions deal increased damage with the Searing Exarch's implicit too. And then moving on to our bout over here, of course, is a Darkness Enthroned, which increases the effects of Socketed Abyss jewels. In these jewels, what you must have is minions deal increased damage if you've used a minion skill recently, along with flat added chaos damage to minions and any life. Pretty much 20 life will be good enough. You can get ones with really high additional chaos damage just to make it even more potent and to give your minions more damage, of course. And because we're always using a minion skill, as Summon Raging Spirits is a minion skill, so is Flesh Offering too, this will be permanently up. And then just moving on to our rings, I have got a Gloam ring over here for the minions take 15% reduced damage if it's in your left ring slot, as mine is. Minions have increased life, damage, elemental resistances, attack and cast speed, and then I just crafted some life. Should you want to make this ring yourself, if you buy 5 Gloam rings and you vendor them with the same item level, then you will get one which is not mirrored. And then from there on, you can just spam a few bound fossils. I think it took me about 7 to about 15 bound fossils to land these types of rolls. And then you just craft on some life, and then you're pretty much golden. If you want to buy this ring, it's going to be about 5 to 60 vines, which is pretty insane considering they're so easy to craft yourself. For my other ring, I have got a bone ring for the minion Ellie res, some dexterity, as the build definitely is somewhat starved of dexterity. As you can see, even in the skill tree, I've picked up dexterity. It's definitely starved of dexterity. You can get it on other gear pieces too. You don't have to get it on the ring. And then of course a little bit of chaos resistance with the minions have increased attack and cast speed, which is not really a big deal, but it is some good quality of life for the build. And then most importantly, for the biggest damage upgrade for this build is the Covenant chests, which gives Socketed Gems are supported by level 29 added chaos damage. This gives a massive boost to damage, especially when it's paired with the Envy skill. It does give a large amount of flat chaos damage to our minions, more specifically to our Summon Raging Spirits. And then obviously it gives us some increased maximum life. I do just want to note that when you do use this chest, all of your skills will end up not just costing mana, but they will also cost an equivalent amount of life for all of your skills. As you can see, how all of mine end up costing mana and life together, which isn't a huge deal as we make use of the Vitality Aura, so our life regeneration is high, so it does counter that, which is not a problem at all. And then obviously for your flasks, on your Divine Life Flask, you should look to get instant recovery with immunity to bleed, and then a Quicksilver for the increased movement speed, along with increased duration and increased armor during flask effect. And then on my Granite, I've got reduced effect of curses on us. This is for the extra armor. And then of course I'm using a Quartz Flask for the phasing over here with immunity to ignite on it. And then lastly is our Amethyst Flask for the increased chaos resistance and immunity to poison. I do just want to note that you should probably craft unused when charges reach full, just to make it so that you don't have to piano your flasks at all, making the build a lot smoother. Right, moving on to our skill gems then, just real quick. Obviously we're using Summon Raging Spirits, and then it should be linked to Unleash, giving us 3 seals. What this means is that instead of just normally summoning one by one, right, as you can see, we just summon one by one. With Unleash, when you get to 3 seals and then you use it, it will unleash 4 Summon Raging Spirits at a time. And as you can see, the seals do stack up really quickly, meaning we're able to stack up our maximum amount of 20 Summon Raging Spirits pretty quickly. We are using a chance to poison over here, giving flat added chaos damage and the chance to poison on hit, and then melee splash. This is in order for us to have somewhat speedy clear in maps. And obviously for bossing, what you should do is swap it out for Vile Toxins. You can not swap out and use Vile Toxins for mapping as well. Your mapping will just be about 25, maybe 30% slower, but I'm sure you can pretty much figure out whether you enjoy that or not. In terms of the gem swap, you should look to get at least 1 white socket on your Covenant, or you can even have 3 or 4 or so. You can buy the white sockets for like 30 chaos each or something from people in Global. And of course, moving on is our minion damage here, giving our minions more damage, which enables them to deal even more poison and chaos damage. And then lastly, of course, is our multi-strike, which enables our Summon Raging Spirits to attack really quickly, meaning that they can stack their poisons up very fast, and it gives us a faster ramp up time, especially on bosses, so it doesn't take too long for them to ramp up. And then moving on to in the weapon, I just have Desecrate here, along with Convocation. And then, of course, I have Generosity in the weapon. And the reason why I have Generosity in the weapon is because it applies to the Envy skill itself, giving it 39% increased area of 39% increased effect, and 40% increased area of effect as well. Meaning, even if our minions are at the edge of the screen, this aura is still reaching them, so they can continue dealing a shitload of damage. And then in my helmet, of course, over here, I'm using Flesh Offering for the minion attack and cost and movement speed, along with the Vitality Aura for the increased life regeneration, and then our Determination Aura 2 for the additional armor and more armor that it provides us and our minions too. The Vitality also applies to our minions, giving them some extra recovery. And then I've got the Despair Curse here, so enemies have 30% less chaos resistance, along with them taking 35% increased damage from damage over time effects, in this instance from our poisons. And then of course it does give some extra flat added chaos damage. And then here in the shield, I've got Wither linked to Spell Totem and multiple totems. This is in order to summon 3 totems up at a time, so we can stack up our Wither debuffs, which caps at 15, giving 90% increased chaos damage taken in total, which is a huge damage increase, especially on bossing. Right, and then over here in my boots, I just have a Carrion Golem, which gives all of our minions the additional physical damage. The reason why I'm using this is because of our Ascendancy with Unnatural Strength, whereby our minions gain 30% of physical as extra chaos damage. I've got Feeding Frenzy linked to it, so I permanently have Feeding Frenzy for all of my minions, giving them more attack speed, obviously. And then linked to that, I have got a placeholder being Summon Phantasm Support. This is because I pretty much just had an open slot and I really didn't know what else to use, so I just popped that in there for some extra minions and a tad little bit extra damage. And then of course I'm using Flame Dash just for utility to get around and that. And then here in my gloves I'm using a Divergence Animate Guardian, so he has got a lot of extra minion life, so he can remain tanky and not get destroyed by most modifiers. I think my Animate Guardian has fallen to half-life about only 3 or 4 times, which isn't bad at all. In the early stages with the budget Animate Guardian, he did die without Divergence, so I do highly recommend picking up a Divergence Animate Guardian for yourself. And then of course is our Raised Spectres over here for our 3 utility Spectres, and then our Raised Zombies, which is just as meat shields and a little bit of extra damage, of course. And then I've got all 3 of these linked to Elemental Army. And the reason why they're linked to Elemental Army is so that they have 4 to all maximum maximum resistances, along with some more additive elemental resistances. But this is also very well paired with our minion defense mastery, which gives our minions 8 to all maximum elemental resistances, meaning that they have 12 to all maximum elemental resistances, which does make them far more tankier. Right, so that is it for the build guide, boys. I hope you enjoyed it, and should you have enjoyed it and you have not yet dropped a like, drop a like on the video. Don't forget to share it as well. And if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to ring the bell to stay updated with my latest build guides, videos, update videos, and more importantly, my live streams that I do right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, Exiles, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream, Exile.